One of the most frustrating parts of the Persona community is the weird aversion to playing the games. A popular inside joke in the community is that Persona fans don't play their own games, though slowly this has gone from being a punchline to a mantra that's being upheld. I'm certainly not the first person to notice this, but it's a trend that I've seen become more and more common as time goes on. While it's easy to point and laugh at these people, lately I've been wondering the reason why this option is so appealing. If you're watching this video, then there's a very high chance that you view video games as art. One of the most important parts of video games is their level of interaction, and Persona is no exception. Interaction and player participation is the sauce that gives this medium its unique flavor. But lately, it seems as though people are allergic to this secret ingredient. This topic has been on my mind for a long time, and because of the recent Persona 4 Revival trailers, I figured it was time to put them into words. This video isn't about shaming people, rather I want to understand why people experience Persona like this, explain what they're missing out on, and most importantly, how we can get these people to overcome whatever hurdle is stopping them from fully enjoying these games. If you want to stop LARPing Persona, then you came to the right place. The first order of business is to try to figure out why this happens to begin with. What's causing people to choose watching someone else play a game as opposed to playing it themselves? The biggest barrier of entry to video games is the accessibility and financial aspect. I don't mean accessibility as in gameplay features, I mean actually getting your hands on the thing. There was a point in time where if you wanted to get into Persona, your options were pretty limited. Prior to late 2022, Persona was primarily locked to older and outdated hardware. All of the mainline games were exclusive to PlayStation systems, and really what you had on offer varied greatly depending on the console in question. Believe it or not, there was a very long time where the only game available to most players was Persona 5, as it was natively available on PS4. If you wanted to visit the franchise's history and experience some of the greatest games in history, then you had to do some digging, whether that be by buying a PlayStation 3 and the games off of the crappy store, or everyone's favorite old reliable method, emulation, neither of which were the most intuitive paths to take. This is the era where the accessibility argument had the most validity. Buying old consoles just for a handful of games is a pretty bad investment. Unless there was more to the PS3 than Persona that you were interested in, it was honestly pretty difficult to justify the cost of the thing. That, and you would still have to buy the games themselves, which was a bit of a toss-up in terms of emulation quality and availability. Persona 1 and Innocent Sin, for example, were never made available on PS3. So you wouldn't be able to even play every game anyway. Emulation is a lot more flexible, but it asks for a bit more out of people to set up and run properly, both in terms of hardware and software. This was truly the caveman era of Persona, and really, we haven't evolved that much further since. Sure, in the past few years, Atlus has ported the big 3 Persona games to every platform imaginable, but there's still plenty of stragglers that got left behind. Some really good games too, which is a shame. If you want to play any of the super old stuff, then PC is your best bet. In regards to the most popular games though, they've been more accessible than ever. You can buy Persona 4 Golden for dirt cheap on any of the major platforms. On PC, that game is super lightweight, and if you can run Golden, you can probably get games like P5 Royal and P3 Reload up too. They might chug a bit, or you can't max out all of the graphics settings depending on your rig, but if you're willing to compromise, you can definitely get these games working. It's never been easier to get into Persona if you actually want to play the games. Though, when it comes to actually playing Persona, that's when the divide rears its head. Let's cut to the chase. Not everyone likes turn-based games. While a lot of people do, and Persona is recognized for having solid combat, not everyone will enjoy the same thing. In the same way that I don't really care about Ubisoft games, somebody out there loves them to death. However, with Persona specifically, it's a bit of a unique case. Its story, characters, and world are all universally enjoyable. You don't have to be a turn-based connoisseur to appreciate Junpei's insecurities, Risei's battle with her personal identity, and Takemi's fear of repeating past failures. It's because of themes like this that Persona has skyrocketed in popularity in recent years. That, and the social life element to the game, allows people to play out a specific fantasy. I've seen so many people want to try out Persona because of the social elements, but end up backing down because they learn it's a turn-based RPG. They see the core combat and assume the game isn't for them because they associate that kind of gameplay with somewhat shallow and slow experiences. I understand that Pokemon isn't the same game as we remember it being, but that doesn't mean all turn-based games are like that. Modern turn-based games are much more involved than gamers realized, but I do get it. It's hard to get into something foreign, especially games as complex as Persona. I very clearly remember being stun-locked multiple times during my first playthrough of P4 because I had no idea what even made a good Persona to begin with. When players see that their favorite part of the game is locked behind gameplay they don't enjoy, then I can see why some of them would gravitate towards just watching playthroughs. Why bother interacting with a portion of the game you already know you're not gonna like? It would be easier to just skip the bad parts and focus solely on the aspects that appeal to you the most. While I understand the mindset, I cannot agree with the perspective at all. In fact, by interacting with Persona solely through the cutscenes, you are doing yourself a huge disservice, and are inadvertently stunting your potential love for the franchise as a whole. And no, it's not just because I think turn-based games are fun. One of the best parts about video games as an artistic medium is its unique form of storytelling. Every art form has this in some way or another. Whether that be visual or written, art tries to tell stories and to make you feel emotion. Video games have the benefit of conveying emotions and themes through an entirely unique way. The way players interact with the game itself is a form of storytelling, and by removing that interaction, we're losing a super important part of the experience. To use an example, one of my favorite games is The World Ends With You. It's a DS RPG where you play as an isolated teenager who learns to find a fulfilling life through building connections with others. If you were to judge this game solely on its cutscenes, then it's a pretty good story, though not one we haven't seen before. But what makes TWEWY a great game is how its game design and mechanics are used to tell that story of personal growth. TWEWY is a game about working together. It's about finding synergy with your partner and pushing through impossible odds. Everything about the game is designed in a way to get you right into the shoes of the main character. Controlling Neku through the touchscreen is intuitive and natural. It feels great to execute attacks through swiping and tapping. But when you add in the extra layer that comes with the partner character, suddenly everything changes. You're not just controlling one character, you're commanding a team of 2 units that share a singular health bar. Even if you play perfectly with Neku, you can still get a game over if your partner dies. This puts you directly into the mindset of the protagonist. Like Neku, you might view your partner less as an ally and more as a hindrance. But as you progress through the game, learn the mechanics, and how to properly manage both characters, everything starts to click. Neku's personal journey of trust is reflected in the way the player's skills are developed. That's the secret sauce that makes this game such a great experience. Persona is like this too, though it's not as obvious. Persona are games about the masks that we wear around others. These ideas are explored somewhat in the story, but they become much more prevalent in the gameplay. For party members, this takes the form of skills and specific roles in combat. Chie battles with a very specific set of skills and stats. Her combat style is totally unique to her. That's the mask that she wears around us during the gameplay. It might not be fully representative of her true self, but it's influenced by the person that she is. While this applies for every other character, the most important and developed mask is the one that the player wears while interacting with the game. Everything about Persona's game design and structure is built around the idea of self-development, and the only reason why it's effective is because of the player agency. What I choose to spend my time doing is up to me, and that decision in of itself is a form of storytelling. Every activity exists to help build the player's sense of identity in the world that they're experiencing. We take on different masks when spending our time with social links, showing the sides of ourselves that we want other people to see to deepen our bonds. In return, you're given great gameplay benefits like more experience for fusion, or even new abilities to use during the dungeon crawling. Personalization and player interaction goes hand in hand with Persona's main theme. Removing the gameplay from the equation doesn't strengthen the storytelling, it just makes it worse. That's not even considering the obvious bits either, like how intense gameplay can be used as a climax to a major part of the story. Would the ending of Persona 3 be as loved if Nyx wasn't an amazing boss fight? Would Persona 4 be a better story if I didn't have to engage with the mystery at all? Does Persona 5 work nearly as well if it wasn't up to the player to change the hearts of society's darkness? Honestly, no it wouldn't. It just makes the story less effective and less real. It stops being about how the player interacts with the game and becomes a completely passive experience, which I think misses the entire point of the art form to begin with. Though the source of this ire isn't rooted so much in how these people consume Persona, it's in how they interact with the franchise. There are people out there that, despite never actually playing any of these games, think that they have them all figured out. I have legitimately seen people who have never played Persona argue about the difficulty and game design. Like, come on. Story I sort of get, but gameplay? Really? You can't just get that shit out of watching a Let's Play or two. The only way to properly evaluate game design is by playing the game. That would be like reviewing a movie just by watching the plot summary on the internet. I can't even imagine someone doing that for film, but for some reason, it happens all the time with video games. Never ask a Resident Evil fan what their favorite game is. They haven't played any of them. So, if you want to avoid looking like a fool and you actually want to start playing Persona, here's a few tips to help you ease into it. Pick whatever game looks like your jam and start off on the second to lowest difficulty setting. On safety mode, most of the game's systems can be ignored. So, having it one step above that means you'll actually interact with the game somewhat. Once you have your bearings and are used to how certain mechanics function, then you should slowly increase the difficulty. Normal will be good enough for most people, but if you're feeling a little dangerous, hard is always available. The only exception is Persona 3 FES. That game specifically does not let you change difficulty modes once you start the game. If you want to play the PS2 version of Persona 3, maybe consider easy mode because of that fact alone. There's a specific boss I'm thinking of that will catch you off guard, though there's no shame in looking at the occasional guide if you need a little bit of help. But if you do decide to go down that route, then you absolutely need to practice self-restraint. They're good to reference every once in a while. They might even inspire you to play a bit differently, but seriously, don't rely on them too much. There's been a lot of hostility in the Persona community over the past few years, and it honestly feels like it gets worse day by day. People see the disconnect between certain players and are quick to throw around a bunch of labels at them. Depending on what you like about the series, you'll either be called a casual or an elitist, and it's such a reductive way of looking at things, because, believe it or not guys, we all like Persona. Some people just like certain aspects more than others. I don't think being dickheads about that fact is going to help anyone out. The best way to get someone to appreciate something on the level that you do isn't to shame them for not being there just yet. What we should be doing is offering ways to make Persona more accessible to the crowd that actually struggles to play the games themselves. While I'll always have an affinity towards challenge in my games, I'm not going to make fun of someone if they have to play on a lower difficulty or use the overpowered junk just to get by. What matters isn't how they're playing the game, it's that they're actually playing it to begin with. I hope that what I had to say resonates with a few of you that were on the fence. At the end of the day, I just love Persona, and I want more people to get into this franchise. As long as they're actually playing the games.
Persona! One enemy! Fight! 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 You hit its weakness!
Now's our chance. If you say so. Someone else's
Wow, is
turn.
Yosuke aiming for some overkill?
Persona!